Hello, Dr. Dave back here with you again. Today I want to tell you about the Tina Muckloe connection that has to do with the D.B. Cooper jump. I'll give you the gist of the whole thing. Frank Morris did all of this. He got on the airplane. He showed Tina Muckloe the bomb, and he calls this other stewardess over to sit beside of him. I don't remember her name. And I've often wondered why he did that, and he kind of juggled that story around to me like he was trying to confuse me. But I think what it was about was having the other stewardess sit beside of him, who wasn't involved in the whole thing, took the heat off of Tina Muckloe. And you may know that Tina Muckloe gave one statement and she would never talk about it again because she was involved in it. She has a brother, or had a brother, or brother-in-law, or someone in her family, a family member that was a FBI agent. Or if not an agent, he worked in the FBI, and this was Frank's inside connection with the FBI. Well, Frank had this other girl sit beside of him, as I said, so that the FBI would be more interested in what she had to say than what Tina Muckloe had to say, because Frank talked a little bit more extensively with the other girl. So after Frank gets everybody off the plane and gets loaded with money, and I might mention that the reason he had them use $20 bills instead of $100 bills, which gave him a huge sack of money to carry, jumping off of a plane with 200-mile-an-hour winds blowing past him. The reason he did that was because he figured, and he didn't tell me this, I just assumed this, that he figured that it would take them so long to mark all of those bills, if they were smaller denominations, that they wouldn't be able to mark them. And Tina was his connection to find out if they were marked. So when he does get off the plane, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that story because some of it's funny and it's interesting, That's what kept me interested in this guy all these years, that story of jumping out of the airplane with a sack of money and the trees beating him up on the way down and everything. And I've told you this before, the Anglin brothers were waiting in a car on the ground for him, and he had another guy who had taken him up for some jump lessons flying around near the area to spot where he jumped so he could tell the Anglin brothers. And that guy, I think his name was Washington. If you look up, all these pilots who were accused of being D.B. Cooper, he's one of them. I wish I could remember his name right now. I'll give it to you later. But anyway, he was involved in the whole thing. And so was the parachute rigger, Ed Cossey, I believe was his name, and he ended up dying in 2013 by strangely getting his head bashed in his own garage. Well, Frank told me he was going to kill that guy if it was the last thing he ever did. But he messed around with it. I'll get that guy and all this and that, and then he'd wait a few days and he'd bring it back up later. I'm going to kill that guy. And it didn't sound so offensive, He didn't come right out and tell me he was going to murder this guy. Well, the FBI said that that D.B. Cooper wasn't involved in that in any way, but the FBI is keeping it quiet because they don't want to admit that Frank Morris was D.B. Cooper, and Frank Morris escaped from their escape-proof prison. Now, let me back up. Frank gets everybody off the plane. He's got his sack of money. He gets his parachute. He dumps his heel lifts, which made him look so much taller than Frank Morris. And I told you about that in my last video. He dumps the bomb. The bomb goes into Lake Merwin. And he jumps out of the plane. He tells me about getting beat up by the sack of money on the way down in the trees. He landed in the trees and they beat him up all the way to the ground. That whole story is in my book, My Dance with the Zodiac Killer. This is volume 1. I need you guys to get out this book, go get this book, read it, and understand it so that I can write another volume, okay? This is the first volume. I need to write at least 4 more to tell this whole story. It spans my entire life since 1955 or 58, somewhere in there. My Dance with the Zodiac Killer. You'll see DB Cooper on the front, the three sissies that escaped from Alcatraz, lovers, and the Texarkana Moonlight Murder, and the picture, police drawing of the Zodiac Killer, and the Zodiac in the middle, because they're all connected. This guy right here was the brains and the mastermind of the whole thing, Frank Lee Morris. Okay, don't get him mixed up with Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood was a great actor, but he just followed the script. He didn't follow the right script, though, but close. Anyway, that's another video. Okay, so he's off the plane. He jumps. He gets to the ground. He's freezing to death. He doesn't have anything around him that's not wet, so he ends up pulling out $5,000. He told me he made a tent with the canopy of the parachute, and he started a fire in there with the money to warm himself up. And he said he almost caught the whole thing on fire. It was kind of funny the way he said it. Anyway, I guess he buried the parachute somewhere, and he gets the money, and here's where the connection comes with the Tina Muckloe, Tina Bar thing. And it only makes sense because Frank had this word association thing that went with his schizophrenia and being a psychopath or whatever. He takes the money, in my opinion, okay? This is just my opinion from what I've heard, because I saw this thing on YouTube where someone said that Tina Muckloe lived 10 miles from where Tina Bar is at. Makes sense. He would have to go by her house to find out if the bills got marked, because she had the brother-in-law or brother or whatever that worked in the FBI, and he would know that. And she told him, yeah, they're marked. You can't spend them. Every single one of them is marked. They didn't miss a bill. That's why that airplane had to sit so long on the tarmac, waiting for those guys to mark the bills. Now, Frank finds out the money's marked, so he goes down to Tina Bar, Tina Muckloe's house, 10 miles down the road, Tina Bar, and he buries the money there, knowing that they would find it someday, and it would mislead him on what all was going on, and probably killed somebody on the way, so he would have a murder victim and a place to steal some money or whatever. By the way, there was a body found in a barn about, I think it was 2 or 3 miles from where he had landed at, a few miles. And they thought it was a D.B. Cooper at first, and they did an autopsy and found out it was a little girl who was a victim of a serial killer, or maybe more than one serial killer. Now that only makes sense because this girl was supposed to have died 2 or 3 weeks before the D.B. Cooper jumps, and these guys were down there 2 or 3 weeks before, I'm sure, scoping the area out and figuring out where Frank was going to land and everything. He was a genius. He didn't just jump out of a plane like an idiot. He had it all planned. He was also a methodical planner. And of course they killed somebody because that was their daily sex drive thing, and that's where they got their money from. Poor little girl, rest in peace. If you knew all of the girlfriends that he killed of mine, it would make you cry. Sometimes it does me. But anyway, so he goes down there and he buries the money, and that's that. The Tina Bar, Tina Muckloe connection. Well, I want to tell you a couple of things about some of the trolls are saying that my ages don't match up. Well, you know, if you look at my earlier videos and I tell you about my age, I may have been off a year or two, because that's when I first remembered these issues. I have to go do a lot of studying and remembering and looking things up in order to remember exactly when certain things happened. And I have to do a lot of remembering. A lot of this has been blocked out because it was traumatic. In 1950, and I've told you that around 1958 they were attacking me on Minnehaha Street, and I have videos on that. That was in 1958, okay? I was 5 years old. When they escaped from Alcatraz, that would have been 1962, I would have been around 9 years old. And around 1970, 71, when I was meeting with him in Mexico and all these other things were happening, I was 16 or 17. Okay, so those of you who can't do math and want to play troll, well, you know, I'm sorry for you. That's all I can say. There's another troll who is calling me a hoax. You know, come up with some proof. Don't just call me names. I want to hear you say something to prove or just give me an inkling of proof, okay? And if you do, I will give you, I've already told you I'll give you $20,000 if you can prove that I'm not telling you the truth or that I'm making any of this up. Well, I'm raising it to $50,000, okay? $50,000. If you have anything negative to say to me about my story, come up with proof and I'll give you $50,000, okay? Now, you're going to have a hard as hell time proving that something didn't happen when it did, okay? And I remember it all because I was there. And I lost a lot of girlfriends and a lot of friends over this. You know, I don't even want to go any further with it. I'm going to keep giving you information because I know there are those of you out here who understand this story and you're interested in it and you want to hear the rest of it. And you're gonna. I don't care what the trolls say. You guys have a nice day and thank you very much.